Hello, and welcome to the Get Lean and Eat Clean podcast. My name is Brian Grin. I'm a certified health coach, trainer, and author. And this podcast is for middle-aged men and women looking to optimize their health and get their bodies back to what it once was 10 to 15 years ago. I will give you simple, actionable items to get long-term sustainable results. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. All right, welcome to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. My name is Brian Grin. I hope you had a great weekend, and hopefully you had a chance to listen to my interview with Dustin McFarland. He's a functional diagnostic practitioner, tons of great knowledge. We explained his journey going from a vegan to an omnivore, his experience as a natural bodybuilder, the importance of managing blood sugar, ways to improve gut health, the problems with modern wheat. We got into his daily routine, which I love to, and much, much more. So if you haven't already, check out my interview with Dustin McFarland. Now, on today's micro podcast, we are going to touch on a study that was done in 2019, and I'm going to share this with you real quick. Dr. Bill Campbell, who I've had on my podcast, maybe I'll have him back on. He was great. He likes to touch on different studies, and he recently brought this one up. So I thought it'd be beneficial for you guys to take a look. And the title of the study is called Ultra-Processed Diets Cause Excess Calorie Intake and Weight Gain, done by Dr. Kevin Hall and Associates. And we're going to touch on this today. I'll leave a link in the show notes. It was pretty much what kind of outcomes would happen from an ultra-processed versus sort of a whole foods unprocessed diet. And we're going to touch on that today. So I'm sure you can guess exactly what the outcomes were to some degree. These healthy females and males were put into a clinic for a month. And so they lived in this building. Each subject followed a ultra-processed diet for 2 weeks and then a non-processed diet for 2 weeks. So sort of whole foods versus ultra-processed. And they wanted to see what the outcomes were of this. Now, menus were rotated on a 7-day schedule. The meals were designed to be well-matched across diets for total calories. So same amount of calories were presented to the individuals. And this was meals and snacks. Actually, one interesting thing that I read about was it actually cost. They talked about how much it cost to get the ingredients to prepare sort of this everyday calorie content. And the ultra-processed meals were estimated to be about $106 versus $151 for the unprocessed whole foods. And the cost of ingredients were obtained from a local branch of a large supermarket chain. I thought that was interesting. I mean, no surprise there, right? It's less expensive to eat processed foods. And unfortunately, that's part of the reason why people eat that. It can be fairly expensive to eat healthy, which is, and lies a whole nother issue. But I thought that was interesting that they brought that up. So the participants were presented these meals every day and also snacks, and they could eat as much or as little as they wanted. So the big question was would the subjects eat more food during the meals and the snacks if they were highly processed? And the answer was yes. So that was one of the big conclusions of the study. On a processed diet, the subjects ate 500 calories more a day compared to the unprocessed diets. So from there, they ended up gaining about 2 pounds on the highly processed diet versus losing 2 pounds on the non-processed diet. So obviously, if you're eating highly processed foods, you're not going to be as satisfied, and those individuals felt the need to eat more. So the study, one of the takeaway messages was the study that if you eat highly processed food, you're likely to ingest more calories and gain weight. Now, this was done. There was definitely some limitations to the study. It was obviously these individuals only ate this for 2 weeks, 2 weeks at a time, and as a month total. So, take it for what it is. The body can sort of change and adapt over time. Also, body fat mass increased for the people that about a pound during the ultra processed diet, and it decreased a pound during the unprocessed diet, which I think is really a big key as well. I mean, obviously, having muscle and less body fat mass is one key contributor to health, because we all know how important muscle is as far as just sort of a glucose tank. And so these individuals that eating the ultra processed foods obviously put on when this was over, they did this for 2 weeks, a pound of body fat mass just in those 2 weeks. So, I guess the pros and cons of this was it was sort of short with a small amount of people, and there were definitely some restrictions, but it sort of gives you the idea. But also the fact that if you're careful and control your calories, you can, if you consume ultra processed foods all the time, you might not necessarily gain weight. That doesn't mean it's healthy, because I'm not a big fan of just counting calories and that's it. If you're eating ultra processed foods, you're going to have deficiencies in a lot of areas, maybe B vitamins, maybe in certain minerals. So for the long haul, it's not a great way to go about things, but understanding that calories do play a role is something that this sort of showed. And it showed that processed foods will cause you to overeat. And, these highly processed foods want us to eat more. So, these companies that are marketing these foods, obviously, they try to, they create a formulation so that you keep coming back. And so anyways, that was one of the big conclusions from the study. They looked a little bit more in depth in some other areas, but I'll leave a link in the show notes if you really want to dive into that. So I guess the big advice here was to, and I talked about this on in the last micro podcast, prioritize protein, right? Create some more satiation, and try to consist of non-processed foods, but also you can enjoy some foods from time to time. It's not about being perfect. If you can go 80% unprocessed and maybe 15-20% of things that are a little bit outside the box that aren't necessarily healthy, I think you'll be just fine. Because if you try to be perfect, it's tough to keep that for the long haul. So anyways, those are the conclusions of this study. Thought it'd be interesting to share this with you. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me, brian@briangrin.com. And I look forward to talking to you on Friday with another great interview. Have a great rest of the week. Thanks for listening to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. I understand there are millions of other podcasts out there, and you've chosen to listen to mine, and I appreciate that. Check out the show notes at briangrin.com for everything that was mentioned in this episode. Feel free to subscribe to the podcast and share it with a friend or family member that's looking to get their body back to what it once was. Thanks again, and have a great day.